of those things like the movies, 1, 2, 3, you know.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Jim. Happy to have you here with your camera so we can record our meeting today. And I'm pleased to welcome our guest of honor today, Al Jackson. And looking forward to hearing about you and your life and your endeavors. And it's very interesting. I know what I know about it. So, well,
We'll find out about that.
we'll find out, right.
Yeah.
And we're happy to have a few locals with us today as well. Al, I know you mostly from seeing you at the coffee on Monday mornings at the Methodist Church.
Right.
And that's a nice group that meets there from all over town
Right.
and take care of town business that
Right.
way.
Yeah, exactly.
The informal kind. You take care of another kind. But before we get to what you do these days and have done in your career and so on, I'd like to just start with you.
Okay.
And is your real name just Alan Jackson?
My name is Alan Jackson.
Okay. Is it a family? Were you named after somebody?
You know, I would best guess that it was. My grandmother Meyer maiden name was Allen. Wasn't spelled the same, but I assume that's where it came from.
Right. And her maiden name was what?
Allen.
And the name before that you said a grandmother.
My grandmother Meyer,
Meyer.
Exie Meyer, was her maiden name was Allen, A-L-L-E-N.
Okay.
Lived over in Carrollton.
Alan and
Township.
then Meyer.
Right.
Okay, and then Jackson. All right. And your address I have for you is just outside of town.
Right, 4925 East on 500 South.
Right, just about 500, isn't
It
it?
is. For our property is at 500.
Big corner, yes. And you've lived there how long?
We moved there in 1986.
Okay. And where were you born?
I was born in Lafayette.
Oh, all right. And when?
In July 19th, 1946.
1946.
So that makes me 75 years old, and I was reflecting on that a bit today when we were thinking about this. 65 out of my 75 years I've lived here in Carroll County.
You've lived here how long?
Well,
In Carroll County?
total 65 years.
65 years altogether, yeah.
You
Okay.
know, I was raised in Carroll County in Jefferson Township up around Monticello.
Oh, okay.
And my grandparents lived here in Burlington Township. That's where I live now. It was their farm. They bought that in 1940. So my connection to Burlington Township's been for all 75 years in one way or the other.
Yes, right.
Right.
So you're a farm boy. You grew up on a farm, right?
I did. My folks had a farm in Jefferson Township. Started actually a small farm in near Yeoman.
Near Yeoman, Indiana.
Yeah, until I was 5, and then we moved to further north, right in the corner of Carroll County. We had a 100-acre farm up there, where I lived.
So were you a farm boy? Did you actually do a lot of the chores and help with the harvest and animals and all that?
Sure.
You did?
One of my favorite or least favorite things was gathering eggs.
Really?
My folks had a big chicken house at the time, big
Yeah.
at that time, and us kids gathered the eggs, and I didn't really care about eggs for a long, long time, but that's back when you put them in a 5-gallon bucket, got them out, and used your little sand block to knock the extra
Right.
stuff off the outside
Right.
of the egg before
Right.
it went to market. Yeah.
I have a story, this is an aside, I have a story that I've sent to the magazine The Good Old Days. It hasn't been printed yet, but I call it The Guilty Chicken. And it's a story about my daughter Terry, who, you know, we were visiting my folks who still had chickens out on the farm. And so my dad invited little 4-year-old Terry to go with him to gather eggs one day. And my mother said, well, while you're out there, if you happen to find the hen that's been eating the eggs, bring it home and we'll have chicken noodles for supper. So Grandpa took little Terry out with him to gather eggs, and they came back with a bucket of eggs and a chicken. And Mom said, oh, you found the chicken. And Terry said, no, Grandma, we didn't find the chicken that was eating the eggs. And Grandpa said, but I was hungry for chicken and noodles, so I decided I was going to bring it anyway. So he brought a chicken home.
Right.
So Terry sat, we let her stand and watch over the table as Mom cleaned the chicken. And when she reached into the cavity of the chicken, she pulled out an egg that hadn't been laid. She said, Terry, look at what I found. Terry hopped down off the chair and ran into the living room and said, Grandpa, we did find the chicken that was eating the eggs. I think I've told that here before. It's a favorite story. So, farm boy. And then, did you belong to, did they have 4-H way back then?
Well, they had 4-H, yeah, but I wasn't part of it.
Uh-huh.
I did a little scouting, not much, a little Cub Scout type of thing. So there was just events in our life that probably detoured a lot of activities. The primary.
Just having to do with the farm life, huh?
Well, yeah, after I was 9 years old, my mother died, and so a lot of things became a little fuzzy at that point in time.
I'm sure. Tell me about that. I've heard about that, but I want you to tell us about that experience and even from, you can, the viewpoint of the 9-year-old, what happened to your mother?
Well, my mother was struck by lightning when I was 9, out there on the farm where I live now, in the woods. She and my aunt, my uncle, and my granddad were hunting mushrooms on one Sunday, and a thunderstorm came up and struck a tree that she was near. And she was actually pregnant with her 6th child, but I have 4 siblings, and I have step siblings also, but at that time, anyway, it's just one of those events that happen is kind of changes your life.
It would. You were not with them at the time.
No.
Did she die immediately?
Oh, yes.
It struck her dead right away. Mm-hmm.
As far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
That happened.
So, to a 9-year-old, what a shock and an adjustment. And were your siblings older than you or younger?
I have an older sister.
Okay.
She's 3 years older, and the rest of them are younger than I.
So she was just 12. So
Right.
Did the siblings y'all kind of take care of each other, or grandma and grandpa?
Well, my grandparents were very influential in my life. Actually, both sets. I shouldn't say both sets. My grandmother Jackson my grandpa Jackson died before my folks ever married, so I never knew him. But my grandmother Jackson was a very kind person that cared for us at times, and then we spent quite a bit of time as the youngsters up here on the farm with my grandparents.
Okay.
In particular, my brothers and myself, my youngest sister,
Mm-hmm.
and well, actually my older sister too. But they were very, very important to solidifying our life.
I'm sure it would have been. Did you have church affiliations as well?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So you had a church family?
Right. Well, our normal operating procedure on Sunday, even though we lived in near Monticello, we would come to Flora, to the Grace Brethren Church in Flora, and then from there we would come up to my grandparents' place here in Burlington for noon
Sunday
dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And Grandma would have a fine meal prepared, generally either fried chicken or meatloaf.
Right.
And still one of my favorite meals. And then that evening we go back to church, and following church we would go back to Monticello. So it was a Sunday that we were here when my mother passed. So it was all part of that
Well.
thing. So
Well.
yeah.
Well, sad, but it sounds like you had a good support system
Oh,
around
yeah.
you.
Yeah, we were, I have different thoughts about that, but we were very fortunate to have, not only my dad, who's a pretty solid individual, and then later my stepmother, Joanne, but my grandparents were very important,
Right.
very important to me.
So he was probably only in his 40s when your mother died then, so he did
Actually,
remarry, and
he
did
was
you
actually,
also inherit step siblings, or?
Yeah, he was probably 35, 36 when he remarried.
Mhm.
And when he married, and yeah, his dad had 5 kids to watch after, and my stepmother had 5 kids, so
Wow.
when they got married, there were 10 of us between the
10 of
age of 3 and 13, so.
Between the ages of 3 and 13.
Yeah.
That's a house full.
Mhm.
So, did you have to add on to the house?
No, you just stack them deeper. I know for some reason, the girls, there were 4 girls in one bedroom and 6 guys in the other bedroom.
Yes.
And for some reason, the folks didn't want us to share their room, so that's how we had, boys had 2 army bunks and a double bed. And,
Well,
so that worked.
So 3 of you in the double bed and the other 2 in the singles, huh?
No, we had two bunks, so that's 4, and then 2 in a double bed.
Oh, there were just 4 boys, and the others were all girls.
They were, I'm confused.
Six
now.
boys.
There were six boys.
Two in each bunk. And
A
two-
bunk is a bunk bed and an upper and a
Yes,
lower,
an upper
so
and
that's
lower.
4,
Four of
and
you.
then 2 in the double bed, so that was
Oh, okay,
six
6
of us.
of you in that room then. So, how was school? Did you have to walk to school, or were you, you were out in the country, you rode a bus?
I went to, I rode a bus. In fact, my dad drove a bus.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, and then when he was in the field, my mom would drive it at times.
Well,
But we went to Carson School. A lot of people don't know where that's
No,
at in
I wouldn't.
Carroll County. But if you go to Patton and turn east on, I think it's 1200 or something like that, would go about 3 miles, and then back north a mile, there was a little schoolhouse out in the middle of nowhere.
well,
So
okay.
that's where I went through 6th grade, and then 7th and 8th grade I went to Yeoman as a junior high, and then into Monticello, and eventually graduated from Twin Lakes. Twin Lakes the first year, when I was a senior, Twin Lakes became a school corporation.
All right. So, did you get involved in sports?
Yeah, I was involved in sports.
What did you play?
I played football and basketball.
They had football there way back then? Our high school didn't have football until our
As
senior
Monticello had football.
They did.
Yeoman didn't have football, but Monticello had football. So as a freshman, I was sitting in the algebra class, and the algebra teacher was the freshman class, freshman football coach, and he said, asked me if I was going to play. I said, no, I don't know anything about it. And he said, well, come out and I'll teach you. So that's how that started.
Really?
Yeah.
Just started from scratch on the field, huh?
Yeah.
Well, did you also play basketball?
Yeah, I attempted. That was my favorite sport, but being short, fat, and slow, it didn't really equate into a great basketball player, but I was good enough to make the team.
Well, that's good. That's good. Okay, and academically, how did you do, and did you like school?
Well, I think that's a secret. That's a secret.
Well,
It's
I have my
hermetically
suspicions.
sealed.
I have my secrets since you went on into academia. I just can't help but
I
think
wasn't the greatest student.
Really?
I was not the greatest student. I did study habits that need to have. And I think there's a lot of different things that influences that, but bottom line, I managed to make it through high school and college.
Okay. Now, what prompted you then, and what problems did you have going to college, or did you?
Well, I have a problem, well, you have money, you can go to college.
Well, that was kind of what I
That
was
wasn't,
wondering.
that's not fair. I was blessed, my dad was able to help me, what I wasn't able to make and earn in the summertime, was able to assist there, but it was a learning experience. I did have to find out that I couldn't treat college the same way I treated high school.
Yes, that's